So, with President Trump set to arrive in Seoul for the second stop of his five-nation Asia tour, we're going to take a look back at what he focused on during the first leg of his tour. Our Jung-hee gives us a wrap-up of what President Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe discussed in Tokyo.
U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to Japan wrapped up Tuesday morning with a strong, coordinated approach toward North Korea. Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe saw eye to eye on upping the pressure against the regime to make it change its stance on nuclear and missile development.
The regime continued development of its unlawful weapons programs, including its illegal nuclear tests and outrageous launches of ballistic missiles directly over Japanese territory, are a threat to the civilized world and international peace and stability. We will not stand for that. The era of strategic patience is over.
During the press conference, Prime Minister Abe announced additional unilateral sanctions against Pyongyang, freezing the assets of 35 North Korean groups and individuals. He also pledged to work closely with the U.S. if Japan needs to shoot down the North's missiles.
Japan consistently supports the position of President Trump when he says that all options are on the table. The discussions we had over the last 2 days have reassured us that Japan and the U.S. are 100% together. As far as shooting down missiles, we will shoot them down if necessary. But we will coordinate closely with the United States, even on shooting down missiles.
President Trump did not forget to raise the trade issue. Earlier on the same day, in his speech to local business leaders, President Trump has said that America suffers from, quote, massive trade deficits with Japan of almost $70 billion a year.
As President of the United States, I'm committed to achieving a fair, free, and reciprocal trading relationship. We seek equal and reliable access for American exports to Japan's markets in order to eliminate our chronic trade imbalances and deficits with Japan.
During the U.S. president's two-day visit, the two leaders also spent time building personal ties through informal activities. Playing golf together and chatting over meals, President Trump and Prime Minister Abe proved their alliance and friendship is solid and strong.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. President Trump is continuing his whirlwind trip through Asia, wrapping up his visit to Japan on Monday. From there, he continues on to South Korea, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Margaret Brennan is traveling with the president.
I don't think we've ever been closer to Japan than we are right now.
President Trump reassured Prime Minister Shinzo Abe that the U.S. commitment to ally Japan is ironclad, and he defended his tough talk on North Korea.
Some people said that my rhetoric is very strong, but look what's happened with very weak rhetoric over the last 25 years.
Mr. Trump prodded Abe to build up his military in response to North Korea's recent launch of 2 ballistic missiles over Japanese territory.
He will shoot them out of the sky when he completes the purchase of lots of additional military equipment from the United States.
In a show of force, the U.S. flew B-1 bombers over the Korean peninsula ahead of the president's arrival. The Navy is also on track to conduct operations with 3 aircraft carriers in the Sea of Japan later this week.
And they were abducted in all cases by North Korea.
The president and first lady also met with the families of Japanese citizens kidnapped by North Korea. Mr. Trump seemed to extend an offer to dictator Kim Jong-un.
If he would send them back, that would be the start of something I think would be just something very special if they would do that.
Now, Japan was the friendliest stop on this 5-nation tour. The president doesn't have quite as close a relationship with the leader here in South Korea, who favors a more restrained approach to dealing with the North. DeMarco, today the president sent a $6 billion request to Congress to boost defense readiness.
Margaret, a few questions for you. How important is the U.S. relationship with Japan, and is the president's time there being viewed as a success?
Well, the president's visit was really focused on this message of unity and steadfast resolve to uphold the commitment to Japan's defense. And one of the reasons the president had to make that point is because it had come into question during the campaign. If you remember, the president had repeatedly questioned why Asian countries weren't defending themselves, perhaps not realizing now that he's commander-in-chief that's changed what an extensive U.S. military presence there is here because of that threat as well to the U.S. mainland now posed by North Korea's expanding nuclear arsenal and capabilities. So this really was once again underscoring that the U.S. will indeed help to defend Japan. And it was just time and time again, whether it was on the golf course or having lunch, hamburgers, sitting next to the Japanese Prime Minister and praising him time and again. President Trump really wanted to convince the Japanese public and the American public that this is something that should not be called into question, that the two allies truly are going to be working together. And Shinzo Abe, the Japanese Prime Minister, is seen as harder line among Japanese leaders. And so he and President Trump find a similar way of thinking, perhaps a more muscular approach to this region, something that contrasts strongly with the leader here in South Korea, where the president heads next.
Another big topic of conversation on this trip is North Korea. How is that expected to go over in South Korea, where President Moon favors dialogue with the country?
Well, this is a much shorter stop. The president is going to be here for maybe 36 hours or so. It isn't the kind of mini vacation the president joked that the beginning of the trip to Tokyo was like. You know, it was pearl shopping with the first ladies, and it was on the golf course for a good first day with Shinzo Abe before they got down to business. It's not the same kind of sense of camaraderie here. This public here in South Korea just elected President Moon Jae-in, and he came to office on a platform of one that really contrasted against his predecessor, who was much more hardline at the time. She had vowed not to negotiate with North Korea. Moon Jae-in came in saying, wait a second, this can be solved diplomatically, and even called into question whether he wanted some of the U.S. military installations here, saying he was rethinking those defense systems that would help to shoot down North Korean missiles. And yet, as the threat has seemed to grow, and as North Korea has demonstrated more and more nuclear capability, the tone of the South Korean president has changed. He has gotten a lot quieter when it comes to criticizing this more muscular approach, but you still don't see that sense of camaraderie because fundamentally, politically, he has been at odds in the past with President Trump. So this is going to be an important message for President Trump to send here, to reach out to the South Korean people. We have heard there are protests planned here, but to say that the U.S. remains in lockstep and not show any daylight that could be exploited by North Korea or by China or any of the powers here who aren't necessarily on the same page in terms of the unification of the peninsula and the denuclearization of it.
Margaret, President Trump is also expected to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss the situation in Pyongyang. What can we expect from that meeting?
Well, this is going to be a meeting everyone scrutinizes. Any kind of photograph, any kind of image, finding out even who's in the room. Remember, last time was a very limited number of advisors in the room, just the Secretary of State, the President, and their counterparts on the Russian side. Given where we are with the Russia investigation back in the United States, remember, this was a foreign trip where the President really wanted to escape a lot of that. In the wake of those two indictments of former campaign aides and the guilty plea by another one. So this is always politically risky for the president. He's keenly aware of it, but his team emphasizes this is about national security, and when it comes to shared threats like North Korea, which borders Russia, and Russia is very much aware of that growing capability, the president says that's why they need to go through with this meeting, really focus on finding things the U.S. and Russia can work together on. They're very concerned that Russia may not stick with the sanctions regime. Remember, the U.S. needs the rest of the world powers to agree to continue to try to cut off North Korea if the president's strategy here has any chance at working.